Hey guys, Scott here. So today we're going to go over my first impressions of the Alien chapter as a whole. Now we're going to talk about the killer, having had a chance to play it for quite some time. I think it's an it, right? Because it's not the queen. It was an it. I got a chance to play the Xenomorph and the actual map and all that stuff. So yeah, here my first impressions are overall, I would say very good so far. I think there are a couple of things that need adjusting, but we're not in like a Skull Merchant or Knight scenario. We actually have a very cool base for a killer, and I like it a lot. So first up, let's actually go over something I didn't think I'd be starting with, which is the new map. The new map is actually not bad. It's actually a pretty decent new map. This is the first not bad map they have made in over a year, in my opinion. I was really worried we were going to have the actual spaceship and be inside it the entire time. What they did was very clever. They made it so it was the crash landing site. It reminds me, if anyone played Mass Effect, it's like the Normandy crash landing. It's like a DLC or something. It's very, very cool. But this is a very clever way of having the actual spaceship be enterable, but also have standard DBD outdoor areas as well. I think, honestly, perfect. Like, what they did here was a very, very smart decision. I played on the map for a solid couple of hours, and it was good. I didn't really notice anything super broken. The main structure, obviously, the spaceship has some pretty strong loops, but the outskirts are fairly weak. So, I don't know. It just overall seemed like a pretty decent map. I was playing against pretty solid players, too, and yeah, I didn't really feel like it was unfair or anything. I think this is the first decent map they've made in like over a year. So props to Behavior. They finally got one right. And aesthetically, it's gorgeous. This is playing on low settings, by the way. On Ultra, it actually looks very, very cool. So they really nailed the new map. I don't really have too many complaints about it so far. Maybe there'll be more as I play on the map more, but overall, this is some good stuff. So I just wanted to go over that first because it's usually the map is the worst part. But no, this is really nice. So now Alien itself. The Xenomorph is very, very cool. First of all, people keep saying it's like Demogorgon with the tunnels. I have to it's a little pet peeve. This is not like Demogorgon whatsoever. He has this tunneling component, and that's very true. And Demogorgon can also go in tunnels. But Demogorgon's teleport his tunneling system is basically a glorified teleport. It's not, there's no tunneling system. You just look at a thing and you press a button and you end up at that thing. By that logic, you could say Freddy is like Demogorgon because he looks at a thing and teleports to it. It's not really the same thing. This has a fully in-depth, entire underground cave system that leads up under generators. You can hear which generators are being worked on. You can see people's footsteps up there. You're undetectable while you're in this. You move super fast. It recharges your power faster while you're crawling around there to incentivize you popping up in random different places. So it has a lot more going on. And honestly, I would have loved to see Demogorgon have something like this, but Alien gets it. I'm totally fine with that. It's very cool. It's a very cool little system. I had a lot of fun putting on Lethal Pursuer and then just spawning in the match and hopping in one of these holes and then just popping up next to someone 6 seconds into the match. It was really cool. Now, you don't always spawn next to one, so it's not going to work out like that perfectly, but when it does line up like that, it feels really nice to be in a chase like as fast as like a Blight can be in a chase. It's really, really nice. So when the game starts up, you are not in any power. You're just basically a normal killer, normal terror radius, normal movement speed, but after a certain amount of time, you enter this runner mode, which you can see here. You crawl on all fours. We finally have a quadrupedal killer in DBD. It's very, very cool. And also his nod and his rotation, side note, while on all fours is probably the funniest thing in the goddamn game. It is so good. Oh, I love it. But the runner mode, you run like the same amount of movement speed. Your terror radius, I believe I've heard, shrinks from 32 to 24. I'm not 100% sure. We need data miners to look that up. But your terror radius gets a bit smaller, and you get this tail whip attack, which is, I'm going to say it now, one of the most awkward things in the entire game to add, but almost to the point where I like it. It's very, very misleading, first of all. When you use the tail attack, there's like this yellow line that goes straight, and then your tail actually like follows that up as well. I need to make it super clear, those things are incredibly misleading. The yellow line and your tail animation, they don't matter whatsoever. The only thing that matters is the hitbox that you honestly can't see. It doesn't match up visually at all. And it's pretty jank, and they do need to make it clear so new players are not frustrated. But there are a lot of tiny little nuances to this tail whip that I just started learning hours in. And it has sort of like a lingering hitbox, but not in the same way that Nemesis does. What Nemesis does when he uses his tentacle attack, you can strafe left and right, and it'll kind of like widen the hitbox of it because it lasts, maybe a half a second. So you have a little window to make it a bit wider. With this killer, it's not done via strafing. When you do your tail whip, there's like a quarter of a second window where you can essentially draw a line with the hitbox. It's very hard to visualize. it's not clear at all from the animation what's happening. I just did this from testing over and over and over again in Kill Your Friends and custom games. But there's a tiny, tiny window where the hitbox starts and you can move it a little bit. And that is really something that's going to have a very high skill ceiling, which I love. I love killers with high skill ceilings. So there were times I couldn't shoot over something, or so I thought. But what I actually could do was aim up. So I whip my tail up and then drag it down so it lands on top of them. It's really hard to do. And I almost don't even know if it's intentional or not. I think it's intentional. It seems intentional. But whereas Nemesis drags his entire body left and right, you drag your cursor or your mouse or keyboard or your controller up and down. And you can just barely adjust it, which allows you to hit over things that Nemesis can't hit over, for example. But like I said, the skill ceiling of this is very high because it's a very tiny window you have to do this. If you do it too early, you'll end up just hitting the pallet or the wall or whatever's below you. If you do it too late, you won't have dragged the hitbox down and you'll be swinging above them. So he's actually gotten pretty good anti-loop, but it's significantly harder to use than someone like Nemesis. So I think once you get the hang of this, his anti-loop is actually going to be pretty damn strong, but it's not going to be something accessible by most players, in my opinion. Most players will be able to get people locked in animations like vaulting and things like that, and that's totally fine. You know, newer huntresses can get free hits at pallets and vaults and things like that. That's okay. But there are going to be some elite Xenomorph gamers that are able to hit people in places that no one else can by dragging this hitbox perfectly, and I love that. I love that component. I love that slight jank that has a skill ceiling. That's basically Dark Souls PvP in a nutshell, and that's why I kind of like it. So they do need to make the visuals more clear, though. That's 100% something they need to do. The visuals need to be way more clear where exactly the tail is hitting, because it's not clear. The yellow line, the animation of the tail itself, they completely lie to you. Your tail can go directly through a survivor, and nothing will happen, because I understand how the hitbox works now, but again, it's not intuitive. So that they need to fix. They need to make it way more understandable to the average player what exactly is going on with the tail. So you also have these flamethrower turrets. These are the survivor's defense against the Xenomorph, and they can be pretty annoying. And unfortunately, I think one of his add-ons, I forget the name of it, it's a yellow add-on that makes you stagger slower from the flamethrowers. Because if you're in the flamethrower for like 1 second, you get taken out of runner mode and it sucks. Then you're going cooldown and you're a killer essentially without a power. And that is never really fun to have. You're also slowed by it, but it's a pretty small slow. It's not a big deal. The main problem is taking you out of your runner mode because then you have no power, and that kind of sucks. Now you can quickly regenerate your power by going in a tunnel and then running back and forth. But the problem with that is now you're not chasing anybody. You have to abandon a chase for that, so it's not always a viable thing to do. So the flamethrowers are pretty annoying to go against as killer, but survivors also need a way to combat the killer. It's also another side objective that people have been asking for a while, so I'm okay with it. I just think the add-on that makes you a bit more resistant to it should be base kit, because without it, you don't even have enough time to physically get in range to melee it before you are taken out of your power, which means you have to use your tail whip attack, which you can do in time to knock it out before it'll be just before your bar is filled up and you'll stay in runner mode, and that's great. The problem is the tail has a pretty long cooldown, so you basically have to choose between letting the survivor gain 2 or 3 seconds of distance and breaking it and staying in your power, or just tanking it and continuing to chase them, and you're a lot closer, but now you don't have your power. And it just puts you in this awkward scenario where it doesn't really feel great. However, running just that yellow add-on, that gives you just enough time to run up to a turret and smack it. Now, you still have to not commit to chasing that survivor if they run past a turret. You still have to smack it, but because it's a missed attack cooldown, it's a lot quicker than hitting something with the tail whip. So it ends up losing you a lot less distance. And this is like Barb's Heart or Black Glasses for me. Barb's Glasses, Black Heart for me on Demogorgon, where they feel like add-ons that are almost required to make him feel better to play. Without that, I think you get staggered out of your runner mode a bit too easily, and I would love to see that add-on be base kit and maybe that change to be something else. I don't know. Because having to use your tail whip attack on that is not particularly fair, in my opinion, because the amount of distance a survivor gains after that, unless they're in a corner, is fine, but the amount of distance they gain after that is a little too much, to the point where you can have 4 of these around the map. It gets like really obnoxious as killer when you're having to deal with that. So I wish that yellow add-on would be base kit, but I'll learn to adjust if it's not. It's not that big of a deal. But other than that, that's what the flamethrowers do. They slow survivors when they're holding him, so they have to like kind of slowly tote one over there. So it does take up some of their time as well. I'm like talking about the actual feeling of playing the killer feels really bad without that yellow add-on that slows it down, because yeah, having to rely on the tail whip is It's not so great. Considering the tail whip is not super easy to hit either, and you need to have a split-second reaction time to where the turret is. One of the other complaints I have about the turrets, and I'm not sure this is something that needs changing. This is just something as killer I've noticed. I'm not saying we need a nerf or changes whatsoever, but the turrets are extremely hard to see when they're not actively shooting fire at you. If you're on a map that has tall grass, you physically cannot see them. It's like the survivors are now playing Trapper. You can't see them whatsoever. And that can be pretty annoying because you need to have a split-second reaction to destroying it or you're taken out of your power. But sometimes it just pops out of the grass and it just takes you out of your power. Like, what the fuck, where is it? And by the time you see it, it's too late. Another thing is when it's shooting fire at you, it's really hard to aim at it with the tail whip because it just obstructs your entire screen with literal fire in your eyes and you can't see anything. So there is a couple little quality of life things I'd love to see changed a little bit, but they're all relatively minor, very easy to fix things that are not a big deal. So overall, though, the actual strength of the killer, I would put him honestly around Nemesis. He's had his the strengths of Nemesis, but also some things that Nemesis doesn't have, and Nemesis doesn't have some things that he has or it has, and kind of comparing them. The tentacle works sort of in the same way. This does not break pallets, but it can hit over objects that Nemesis can't, so there's a trade-off there. This killer has extreme ability to traverse the map, where Nemesis has none, but Nemesis has a built-in slowdown with the zombies, and this killer doesn't have that. So there's a lot of similarities, but they are trade-offs to each other, which is why I think he's around Nemesis level strength. Maybe a bit stronger or weaker depending on the add-ons used. His add-on designs are actually very good, by the way. All of his add-ons have some type of use. Some are less useful than others, like causing blindness, which is not super big deal. But a lot of his add-ons are really, really good. The iridescent one he has, where after coming out of a tunnel for 20 seconds, if you're stunned by a pallet, it just straight up damages a survivor. I can already see Spirit Fury Enduring build where a healthy guy drops a pallet and then you smack them and they die from full health in 1 second. That's going to be very strong. He's got a lot of very interesting add-ons as well, so I think his add-on design is great. Visuals are great. The gameplay is fun. I'm enjoying having to learn how to play him because he's very, very weird with his tail whip. Again, everything looks cool. The map is cool. Everything about this chapter is honestly pretty damn good, except the music. The music is horrible. It is so, so bad. Now, the Terror Radius music, as usual, is very good. They usually nail the Terror Radius music, but as soon as they get into the chase theme, I don't know what their composer is on lately, but for some reason, they just won't break out of doing 1 second loops. It's not hard to make, a Nemesis loop that's 7 or 8 seconds, or Wesker's, which is 10 seconds. Make the loop a bit more, have a duration, so it's not just it's a windshield wiper. It sounds terrible. I guarantee I can make a better chase theme in that in 25 minutes, and it would be, 5 seconds or something. I'm not saying make an entire new theme, just extend it with some slight variations or something, but look, at the end of the day, if the only real complaint I have about this chapter so far is that the music sucks, that's pretty damn good, because usually we have way more problems than that. So overall, pretty minor complaint. I'm still having fun trying to learn exactly how his tentacle works, and I'm probably going to be playing more on the PTB today. But overall, I think this is a very well done chapter overall. I'm not sure, he's not going to be a super top tier killer or anything like that if you're worried about that. I never really care about that. I just care about the fun of the killer. And it seems pretty fun to play and seems fun to play against as well. So I think this is overall a pretty solid win. I'm going to keep playing and having more opinions, but overall, this is good stuff so far. That's it. Thanks for watching.